Hello, everyone. Welcome back once again. We are here with Nick Taimurodo, and we are going to be talking more about magic and mysticism and all those occult things, which is one of our favorite things to talk about.
Yep.
Yes. So, what do you got for us today, Nick?
All right, so last week, today we're going to wrap up on the Hermetic principles. I know some people I know this seems to be going on for quite a bit, and I know some people really want to get to the fun stuff. Not to worry, we are going to get to the fun stuff. Of course, like with any practices, we do need to understand the basics first. So I hope it wasn't boring the audience too much with
It's good to
what
have
we've been going through.
Foundation, a solid foundation.
And
Absolutely.
anticipation and excitement.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys want to think about it in this way, think of it as Saturnian a lesson in action, right? So I think we talked about it in one of the previous episodes, or maybe this was something off camera. I don't quite remember. But we talked about how, while Jupiter oftentimes gives us the very good blessings right off the bat, right? Because that's just how he is. Whereas Saturn makes you work for the blessings. But more often than not, the Saturnian blessing can still sometimes be a little greater than the Jupiterian ones. So you can think of it this way. We gotta put in the work.
Like the Amish are very Saturnian. They work, but they love what they got.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, and same principle applies to anything else, not just magic. Like if you want to have a good physique, you got to work out. If you want to have a healthy body, well, you got to make sure you take care of it properly, and that can, it can take a bit of work. So, magic is no different. Yes, and magic's no different. So so before we get into the last two laws for today, we're just gonna do a quick recap on what we talked about last time, specifically with the law of correspondence, and also want to use this opportunity to also give a testimony as well to even syncretism as well, because in the beginning I have mentioned how before you become an occultist or a magician, you must learn how to be a mystic. Mysticism is about understanding the flame. Occultism is about using the flame, at least to put it in a general nutshell. So, like I said, correspondences last week, where when we utilize these powers, when we invoke these powers from either above or from within us. In syncretism, we have learned that all these religions, all these different mythologies, they're really all one and the same. It's much in the same way as different languages, right? Whereas we know in more Nordic or pagan cultures, we have Thor. In Rome, we have Jupiter. In Greek, we have Zeus. In Nordic, we have Freya. In Rome, we have Venus. And in Greeks, we have Aphrodite. Now, this is, as a magician, you'll learn these archetypes anyway, and you'll be utilizing. However, with syncretism, you not only will you know them, but you will start to understand how all these things work together, how these things are interconnected with each other. So if one day you can be invoking Thor, you could see something related to Thor, and be like, oh, hey, that's Jupiter over there. That's expansion, yeah. Whereas, if you don't know this, if you don't recognize this, it'll be like, oh, that's Thor. That's something different. What does that mean, right? It's not to say you can't eventually figure it out, but you will definitely make your journey as a magician so much smoother, and you can actually make progress. Not to say that you shouldn't not to say you should speed through it, because you still need to put in the work, but it'll definitely make it a lot smoother and a lot easier, especially knowing astrology right off the bat. So as a magician, any magician that is even half competent is going to know even just at least the basics of astrology. And it is the mother of all sciences, and magic, much like astrology, is also a science and an art. And I still have a laugh of just the idea of calling magic a science, because it sounds like an oxymoron, because you always think magic versus science, but they're one and the same. They just, anyways, it's just depending how you look at it anyway, what can divide people. But besides all that, so like we said in the first episode, be a mystic first, and ideally study syncretism. It's probably one of the best things you can ever study. And, even if you don't plan on getting into magic, study it anyway. Just loads of things you can get from it, loads of things to understand. And of course, if you're going down the occulted path, in the sense of magic, it'll help you 10 times more. But anyways, so.
Well said.
Thank you. All right, so now for the wrap up the last two laws. So the next law that we're going to be covering is the law of vibration. Now, if you have spent any amount of time in any kind of esoteric circle or watched anything related to it, we've all heard the concept of vibrations, right? People constantly saying raise your vibration and all that. So it's something we're all familiar with on some capacity. So just to read from the Kybalion. Nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates, from the Kybalion. Well, technically speaking, of course, but this is on a much deeper level because we do live on a for those that know, we do live on a geocentric plane, which rests, does not move, terra firma, but that's the point. So the principle embodies the truth that everything is in motion, everything vibrates, nothing is at rest. Facts which modern science endorses, which, debatable, but on some levels at least. And with each new scientific discovery tends to verify, and yet this Hermetic principle has enunciated thousands of years ago by the masters of ancient Egypt. This principle explains the differences between spirit manifestation of matter, energy, and mind, and even spirit, results largely from varying states of vibration, from the all, which is pure spirit, down to the grossest form of matter. All is in vibration, the higher the vibration, the higher the position in the scale. The vibration of spirit is at such an infinite rate of intensity and rapidity that it is practically at rest, just as its rapidly moving wheel seems to be motionless. And on the other end of the scale, there are gross forms of matter whose vibrations are so low as to seem at rest. Between these poles, there are millions upon millions and varying degrees of vibration, from corpuscle and electron, atom, and molecule, to worlds and universes. Everything is in vibratory motion. This is also true on the planes of energy and force, which are but varying degrees of vibration. And while on the mental planes, whose states depend upon vibrations, and even to the spiritual planes. An understanding of this principle with the appropriate formulas enables Hermetic students to control their own mental vibrations as well as those of others. The masters also apply this principle to the conquering of natural phenomena in various ways. He who understands the principle of vibration has grasped the scepter of power, says one of the old writers. So yes, vibration is everywhere. Everything is vibrating on some level. Some things seem still, like the earth. Others are in obvious motion, say like the leaf on a wind. But of course, to put it more simply in terms of how this principle is going to apply in magic. So we're going to go over this in the next episode, the next episode, when we talk about the components of a spell. So just real quick, there are two components to a spell. There is force and there's form, right? Now, both of these are required for a spell to work. So in this case, force, which is the emotional side, and when we talked about the law of gender, we talked about how we need both principles. We need the masculine principle and the feminine principle. Masculine is the more, dominating, logical, rational side, whereas the feminine is the more cooperative, emotional, intuitive, creative side. All right. So when you do a spell, and again, this will be reiterated next time, we also have to put in the emotion too. So it's not just following the steps, what color candle you light, how many claps you do you jump up and down 3 times, do you sing, do you dance, do you do both, etc. But you also got to put in that emotional. So when you're doing your visualizations in your spell or your ritual, of course you have to put in that emotion, right? And that emotion can be joy, can be sadness, can be anger, could be reverence, could be gratitude. And gratitude should probably be something you should always have no matter what, because that's also a big thing. That's probably one of the most important mindsets to have when you do any ritual, doesn't matter what it is to have gratitude for something that which you have already received, that in itself will make your manifestations happen so much more effectively. But of course, when you're doing your visualizations, like I've been talking about, whatever emotion you put into it, so whatever it is you're visualizing, doesn't matter what it is, that emotion that you're carrying will also determine how it will come to manifest. So say, for example, you want to get money, right? Nothing wrong with that. But say you're doing a spell for money, but if you're putting in negative emotion, such as anger or frustration, then that money, it may still manifest, so you may still get it, but it's probably going to come about in a very angry, and frustrating kind of way. So that's something to keep in mind. So if you want to have, things to come smoothly, try to keep it in a either neutral or at best a positive thing. Then of course, this will be up to you. Like some things maybe you want to come around in an angry, frustrating way for whatever reason. There'll always be a lot of niches to go over, but nevertheless, if you want it to come about in a happy and not frustrating way, make sure you put in those emotions, because that's how it'll be charged with.
Okay.
So that's to keep that aspect simple. So the next one we're going to talk about is the law of rhythm. Now just to pull that up again. There it is. So everything flows out, in, everything has its tides, all things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing. To the left, rhythm compensates. So this principle embodies the truth that in everything there is manifested a measured motion, to and from, a flow and inflow, a swing backward and forward, a pendulum-like movement, a tide-like ebb and flow, a high tide and low tide between the two poles, which exist in accordance with the principle of polarity described a moment ago. There is always an action and a reaction, an advance and a retreat, a rising and a sinking. This is in the affairs of the universe, suns, worlds, men, animals, mind, energy, and matter. This law is manifest in the creation and destruction of worlds, in the rise and the falls of nations, in the life of all things, and finally in the mental states of man. And it is with this latter that the Hermeticists find the understanding of the principle most important. The Hermeticists have grasped this principle, finding its universal application, and have also discovered certain means to overcome its effects in themselves by use of the appropriate formulas and methods. They apply the mental law of neutralization. They cannot annul the principle or cause it to cease its operation, but they have learned how to escape its effects upon themselves to a certain degree, depending upon the mastery of the principle. They have learned how to use it instead of being used by it. In this and similar methods consists of the art of the Hermeticists. The master of Hermetics polarizes himself at the point at which he desires to rest, and then neutralizes the rhythmic swing of the pendulum, which would tend to carry him to the other pole. All individuals who have attained any degree of self-mastery do this to a certain degree, more or less unconsciously. But the master does this consciously, and by the use of his will, and attains a degree of poise and mental firmness almost impossible of belief on the part of the masses, who are swung backward and forward like a pendulum. This principle and the polarity that has been closely studied by the Hermeticists and by the methods of counteracting and neutralizing and using them form an important part of the Hermetic mental alchemy. So as I mentioned there, like how we talked about before, polarization makes reference, all the laws you'll notice that all have some kind of interconnection with each other, right? Polarity, law of gender, law of mentalism, cause and effect, all these things are intertwined with each other and they'll always be working together in some way. So, but they have like their own distinction that they merit, recognition. But so the law of rhythm, as it talks about, pendulum swings left and right, things go up, things go down. The biggest way you're going to recognize this in magical work is actually through astrology, which again goes back to what I was talking about, why learning to be a mystic first, learning syncretism, learning astrology is hyper important. Any magician, like I said before, that is even half competent is going to have some basic understanding of astrology. So knowing the rhythm of the planets, which is, much like God's clock, it's the mechanism of this world that, determines a lot. And of course, if you want to use it to your advantage, you obviously got to know how it works. You got to recognize it. So things like knowing where the moon is it waning? Is it waxing? Is a planet as well retrograding, or is it going direct? Because here's one example. Mercury, for example, and I'm sure many people probably have heard this at some point, Mercury retrograde, very, very common to hear, but it's still fairly significant. So if you want to, for example, utilize Mercury in a ritual, you got to pay attention as to whether, okay, is it going direct, is it going retrograde? Because depending whether a planet is going direct or retrograde will determine how its powers are used. So for example, Jupiter going direct, great for expansion. But if it's going retrograde, then it's going to have the opposite effect. So it's going to be, very similar to Saturn. So if there's a lot of growth, Maybe you want to cut it down a little bit. So Jupiter in retrograde will do that. Mercury in retrograde, normally going direct, he's, about communication, knowledge, right? He's Hermes. But in going retrograde, he becomes a trickster. So, becomes Loki. So if Mercury's in retrograde, great time if you want to pull a magic prank on someone. Or maybe you want to be a little bit tricksy for whatever reason. But nevertheless, it's knowing these rhythms and knowing these patterns is going to be hyper important. Even the patterns within ourselves too, because we carry these same principles within us. Remember, as above, so below. And so that's at least a very quick way of understanding the law of rhythm. So we'll quickly summarize. I realize it's what doesn't seem that long, but these are just basic and straightforward. So quick summarization of all the laws we've already been through. So law of mentalism, everything begins in the mind. As astrologers and syncretists will know, this is Aries, head, straightforward. So it all begins there. So if you want to be able to change the world around you, got to be able to change the things within you first. Otherwise, you're just going to be beating your head against the wall. I mean, technically, I guess you could do that, but that's going to give you a cracked skull and a headache. And of course, we have polarity, the law of polarization. White, black, up, down, left, right, masculine, feminine, etc. So understanding these polarizations as well as our own polarizations and ties, how those things influence us, hyper important. I mean, these are all important. I know I'm saying that a lot. But of course, keeping these polarizations in mind as well as understanding them is going to be key. And of course, law of gender, masculine, feminine. Even within ourselves, we have the emotion, we got the logic, we got the unconscious and the conscious. Adam and Eve. Other way around, but whatever. Next, of course, correspondences. This is probably one of the first things you're going to think about. So you want to utilize Jupiter. Maybe you want to utilize the color green. You want to, there's loads of things to go about. We'd be here all day talking about all of them. Cause and effect. So always aiming to be the cause of something, never under the effect. Of course, that's not necessarily always going to be a possible thing, but in everyday life, we always got to be careful to avoid negative influences. Obviously, if it's a positive influence, but we recognize it, be like, okay, let's let it take, see where it goes. If it's a negative one, it's like, oh, no. Gotta avoid that because who knows where that can go.
Is that the fifth one, cause and effect?
Yeah. These are not in any particular order. At least in the Kybalion, they go by a slightly different order. But say for the law of mentalism, that one's always first because all begins in the mind anyway. So cause and effect. And then, of course, we just covered today the law of rhythm and the law of vibration. So these 7 laws, once again, mentalism, polarity, law of gender, correspondences, cause and effect, rhythm, vibration. So those are not in any particular order, at least in the Kybalion. It lists them as mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, and then finally gender. But again, aside from maybe the first one, I don't think order really matters too much, but regardless, important to know all of them. Yeah. So that's the summarization. And since we still got plenty of time, there's actually one thing I do want to bring up and talk about, a particular law that I'm sure probably most, if not practically everyone here has heard at least once in their lifetime, and it's the law of attraction. I'm sure we've all heard this at least once, told what you focus on is what you're going to get. I do want to quickly talk about this because like we talked about in the first episode, how like we're always told what you focus on is what we get. And, sometimes it seems to work. It's like, oh yeah, I was focusing on that and I got it. And then other people are like hyper focusing on something to the point where their blood vessels in their head are exploding and their eyes are turning red. It's like, it's not working. Why is it not working? I'm focusing on it. Well, so the law of attraction, for one, just to start right off the bat, is not a real Hermetic law. It's actually something that's been completely made up in the 1980s on a show called The Secret, or a movie. I think it was a movie. So yes, the law of attraction does have some truth in it, but it's a half truth. So if it was a real law, it would be called the law of attraction and repulsion. Because like, as it carries with the law of polarity, when you can pull something, you can push something away. And of course, while yes, again, there is some truth in it, it's a half-truth. And in and of itself, it can be a very misleading one, because it does not, because what really the law of attraction was actually compiled from, or is an amalgamation from two actual Hermetic laws, which is the law of correspondence and the law of vibration. So that's where the whole thing came about. So for anyone that's still thinking about using the law of attraction or any of that, you might want to stop and toss it out, because like I said, it's a half-truth at best and very misleading at worst. And more often than not, it's just toss it out. It's really very new agey, and new age. While there may be, well, I'm sure there are many of us, myself included, started with the whole new age thing at some point, but eventually you got to break out of it. So law of attraction, toss it out the window, because it will not serve you here.
Yeah, I know, like in my life personally, I watched The Secret back in 2007. I don't know. I don't remember when it came out, but I watched it, and I was already on my like path of like awakening and truth seeking. So it was a good step for me in a good direction. I feel like it gave me some good ideas on how to bring things into my life. I think like it got me writing things down, like the things that I wanted in life. It got me designing a house, which then a year or two later was manifest in the physical. But yeah, that's just my own personal experience.
Yeah, I've noticed.
I don't know much beyond that.
I've noticed good things about it too, but more lately in the last probably 5 years, I've noticed that you just can't think everything into existence.
Right. Yeah, it's more than
I've
just
had a lot of issues.
The thought.
A lot of issues
right?
with it.
Yeah.
Because I would put it into action too. I'd put it on paper. I'd draw. I had like graph paper. I was like designing like hours, date, like that. It was my, it was an obsession.
Yeah.
Designing this house. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. That's a big thing. It's like, it gives you the right idea, but it doesn't teach you how to do it, right? Like, we've always been taught, like we said before, it's like, yeah, you focus on something. We have the power to manifest, but we're just not told how to do it, because there's a way to do it. Someone gives you a sword. We have the sword. Yeah. Yeah. We have the sword, but half the time at first we were just flailing it around. And half the time we might cut something. Other times we're just smacking with a broadside and we're not doing much with it.
We need the skill.
Yeah, the skill. Take an artist. You start painting, just splattering paint everywhere. I mean, unless you're one of those abstract artists, but that's besides the point. Yeah, if you want to make something like akin to the Mona Lisa, well, you got to know how to paint. That takes time and skill.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
so yeah.
And that's what we're doing in this series, is taking what we know and making it even more like skilled. Like we're bringing
and knowledge.
Yeah, knowledge and more like form to it.
Form.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Form.
Yeah, absolutely. What was it? And I was going to say something and it slipped my mind now. Oh well. But doing things properly, and like we all have the potential to be magicians, right? Like everyone has that spark. We all do. But what separates a magician from a non-magician is that a magician knows what they're doing. They consciously willing, and they practice regularly too. That's also an important thing. We're going to go over that again in the future. So it's not just having the knowledge, but actively using it, and of course using it properly. The non-magician obviously does not.
And not just bringing out a ritual or a spell every few months or whatever. Like when you, like if you're, let's say like you're just cruising through life, not practicing any rituals or spells, and then like you just get this like spark, like something happens in your life and you need to banish something that you don't want to experience. You're gonna have to probably do that more than just once, right? You can't just expect it to to do its thing in one instant.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because like part of the virtue of practicing regularly as well is also like there's another thing called something that has been taught to me called desperation magic. When you only go to magic when you need something, and that's one of the worst kinds.
Kind of getting at, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the worst kinds of magic you can do. Reason being, two reasons. One, when you're desperate about something, it's always going to be on your mind. One of the key things, and we'll go over this again. I think we've already talked about it at least once or twice. Is that for you to for something to manifest, you have to keep your mind off it. It has, because when you're thinking about something, it's in your conscious mind. The conscious mind acts as a filter. So if you're not thinking about it, it goes into your subconscious mind, where is the magic starts to happen, quite literally. So keeping your mind off it. But of course, when you're desperate about something, especially, this is also why healing magic is one of the more difficult kind of magics to do because, of course, especially if it's for yourself or for a loved one, you have a stake in it, right? Like if you're physically suffering yourself or you see your loved one, yeah, you want to get it done. You want them to stop suffering. Assuming you're at least a half decent person who has a bit of empathy.
Yeah.
And of course, you do magic's like, hey, oh yeah, that's the solution, or at least a solution that can work. You're gonna be thinking about it, and that's the worst thing you can do. And of course, there's the lusting for results, right? Which you want it to be now, but it has to be a surprise. It's gonna happen in a way of a surprise when you least expect it. There's one law, not a hermetic law, but it's something that's been taught to me, is following the law of least expectance. So once you do your spell, once you write down on your notes, you wrap it up, it's all good to go, then of course you forget about it, and which of course it's going to come to you when you least expect it. So always keep your mind off it. Don't be desperate about it. When you go to it, another thing I said, like I mentioned earlier, you go in with the mindset of gratitude to be grateful for which you've already received.
Yes.
So this is another point why not all the training that you do is going to be done through, verbally or through text. It also comes from doing it yourself, because you train your own mind to do it. Of course, there's also lots of other subtle nuances in magic in your practices that you would only figure out when you do it yourself. So yeah, like magic you need to be a constant practice, and you need to be constantly practicing. It's much in the same way as being healthy or being fit, right? Yeah, you don't just do like 10 push-ups once and you're good to go. You don't eat a salad once and you're good to go. You got to keep it up.
Yeah.
You got to maintain it. So
yeah, the whole thing with focusing on something as an issue, and the answer would be to just let it go. Children do this, and they teach you how not to do it too. Can I get it? Can I get it? Can I get it? Can I get a this? Can I get a that? Can I get a? And they'll keep asking, and whoever they're asking, the parent, obviously in most situations, they'll just say no.
Yeah.
But if they just say it and let it go, the magic of the subconscious, the way we maneuver, 90, around 90% subconscious is how we do everything. Then you're doing the magic. Oh, it just happens to see that thing that you wanted in a magazine and it's on sale or whatever. You just end up walking right into it. Whereas when you're conscious about it, you're asking for it. And if you're asking for it, it means you don't have it. So you're almost binding yourself to the experience of not having it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing with my health too. I keep focusing on my lymphs. My lymphs are swollen. My lymphs are still swollen. I think because I'm focusing on it, I keep walking into the same things that swell my lymphs, like overeating. I need to just eat once or twice a day, eat less, more liquidy food, drink water, and breathe a lot because your lungs pump lymph. But because I keep focusing on it, I keep walking into these situations. Okay, yeah, I'll eat. Okay, I'll eat. And my food is getting more dense and more dense. So to your point, it's true.
Yeah, absolutely. And I forgot there was something else I wanted to add to that, but yeah, law of least expectance. This is also why, like, many times. Oh, actually, that actually reminds me. Even in scripture, I forget which passage it was specifically, but somewhere in scripture it even tells you that when you worship God, you actually have to do it in secret. Reason for that, and there's also a reason why occultists, magicians, are very secretive. right? It's also why even the Kabbalists, they know these rules. They're doing the same thing. That's why they're doing it in secret, not necessarily because they don't want to be caught, though that is convenient for them to do so anyway. But the reason why you keep these secrets, and technically even from yourself, because you want to keep your mind off it, you keep it a secret from even yourself, is because of that subconscious mechanism, right? Like when you do something, when you have an operation, or magic operation specifically, or you have an idea, you keep it to yourself. You don't talk about it, right? That at most, the only people you'd share it with is only those that are participating in the ritual with you. But if they're not participating, keep it a secret. Because of course, you could unintentionally and inadvertently sabotage your own spell work prematurely. So you don't announce it to the world. You only announce it when you only say, "Hey, I did this," when I've already manifested, because it's already there. So it's already broad running. So you can talk about spells that, or rituals and manifestations that have already manifested all day long. Absolutely fine. Just the things that have yet to manifest, that's the one you want to keep quiet about. Because even there's also even accordance. We'll talk about this another point, is the Sephiroth of Da'ath, which also relates to speaking and to be silent. So know when to speak, when to hold your tongue. And that same principle can really apply to any aspect in life, right? There are times where it's like you should say something, other times like, okay, time to listen. But yes.
Yeah, we can totally relate to the oversharing of like things that we're trying to bring into
and it gets
existence.
squashed. And as I'm saying it, I know I shouldn't be saying it. Whatever it is we're trying to do, because we all know that magic deep down. We all know how it works, and lots of people do know this, that you just keep it to yourself until you do it. People just know that because when you talk about it, it just deflates it. It's like stabs that balloon, but you're trying to inflate that balloon within yourself. But as soon as you start blowing it up and then you tell somebody, it seems like it gets stabbed.
Like their doubt comes into
yeah
play.
Because it's not their conception. I don't know, but
Nick talks about this all the time. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have told my friend this or whatever.
But with this for a long time too, of what to say and what not to say. And you say that's da'ath. Wow.
Yeah. And it also goes with I think we said this before at some point, but it's the whole saying of the magician never reveals her secrets, right? May not necessarily the secrets how they do things. Though of course in the age of Pisces it was a lot like that, and there were reasons for it too. Even groups today, there's lots of like orders you can join. You can find around online if you want to. That have you swear a vow of secrecy, never talk about any of this. Fortunately for me, I have no such vow. And of course there's what it's really talking about is this, those are your secrets, your operations. Those are the ones you never reveal. Also, another thing, probably at some point we've all heard this, like say birthday parties, you have your cake and you have the candle. And that whole thing is a ritual in of itself. Very simple one. It's candle magic. You're saying happy birthday, and of course the whoever birthday it is will make a wish and blow it. And we've always been told, don't reveal your wish, otherwise it won't come true. Exactly right there. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. Yesterday we had a friend over, and I just brought out this boss mom that we have and use for certain special occasions, and I just was called to bring that out.
It's like an Ormus powder made by the Immortals.
And you use it, and you don't share your intention or your wish. And I hadn't stated that ahead of time, and I think she asked, what did you wish for or intend for? And I'm like, oh yeah, we can't share it until after it happens.
Yeah, I think she asked if you share it.
Right. Yeah.
That's interesting, huh? It's really interesting that it's just built into the culture too since day one. Don't share your wish. Is that what they said in my family? Yeah. Oh no, yeah. And then they say, did you just say that if you share it, it won't come true?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah, it's funny how so many of these very subtle things that we experience mostly like in childhood or something. How something's like, whoa, shit, that's very occult in nature, very, very related to magic. We at the time we don't think about it too much, but now, further now into adults, like, oh shit, suddenly all those things are now coming back. We just come back full circle. Like,
Yeah.
and it's even how it's been said that children are those are closest to God. Of course, because the imaginations are wild. Like they're closer to that energy, and of course, because of the nature of the world we live in the Kali Yuga, the age of iron, that thing's been stifled out, and has been stomped on repeatedly. It's like, oh, it's your imagination. It's not real. Oh, this and that. Oh yeah, don't worry. That nightmare wasn't real. Like, I mean, it was real, just on a different place, right? Or it's like, oh, I had this quick premonition of something happening. And I was just like, it's just your mind playing tricks on you. You don't need to worry about that. No, not necessarily. Now, granted, some things can be a little bit tricky. Things always try to play tricks on us. But, of course, the problem is that as we grow up, even when we do start tapping into these things, like we talked about before, we're not told how to properly do it. This is stuff we should already know how to do. This stuff should have been kindergarten stuff, right? All of us here should already know astrology since we were, 5, 4? Whenever would be the best time to start teaching us. We should all, but, like we had to learn these things probably a little later in life. Of course, nowadays, probably a little bit further, but it's probably, the number's increasing now. At least, some children are lucky enough to have parents who are astrologists and presumably teaching them in some capacity as they grow up, which is fantastic. They're definitely really lucky. But of course, for everyone else, it's learning as we go. And sometimes it's like we hold on to something that we thought for a long time, only to find out it's not true. Suddenly, we got to relearn the whole thing, and something can apply to anything, including manifestation. Like, we knew how to do it at the beginning, but then we were told to forget about it. Now we forgot. Now we're just
remembering.
Yeah, we're moving into the age of Aquarius, which is knowledge, truth, enlightenment, and awakening of the mind. So everyone's waking up.
Yeah, exciting, and also very, very turbulent.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Uranian energy. For sure. Yeah. Well, this has been really good. Once again, I'm learning a lot, like all the different principles, right? The Hermetic principles. I mean, I've heard that term before, for many years, but I never really dived into it in depth. So
what better person to learn Hermetic principles from Nick, who is an individual with a Mercury sun in Virgo, where Mercury exalts and rules, and an ascendant where Mercury rules, Gemini. So Mercury is the ruler of your chart, Thoth, Hermes, and the moon in Gemini as well, a Mercury-based moon.
Yep, in the first house, yeah.
In the first house.
Yeah.
Not a better person to learn the Hermetic, which is her Mercury.
Right. Yeah.
The laws of Mercury.
Because Virgo also is like the hermit. Mercury was there. Yeah. Anyways.
Cool.
Yeah. I'm super glad that I could break this out along with the constitution that I have. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
That's good.
Thank you.
Well, let's keep going. And there's episode 3.
3 or 4.
Or 4.
Actually, this is 5, actually.
5.
Okay. I know, yeah, 3 did not sound right.
We're cruising right along. Yes, perfect. Okay. Yeah, well, we'll see you all next time.
Yeah, and stay tuned, everyone, because I know, again, we're still going over the basics. May seem a little slow, a little boring, but don't worry. Suspicion. Right now, I have it planned out, so stay tuned at least for episode 8, because that's when we actually get to the fun stuff. So still got to go through 6 and 7.
Okay, so we're gonna get into the practice here in the next couple times.
8, the number of magic.
Okay. Yay.
Yep.
Okay.
Totally did not do that on purpose. Or did I? Who knows? That's the secret.
Your subconscious.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm
Uh-huh. Very
All right.
cool. Okay. See you next time.